see your school board in action. Tell your neighbors and join us next month. We apologize for the lateness as we did have a technical difficulty. Mr. Muscatello, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton,
Here.
Dr. Boston.
Here.
Dave, you switch. Mrs. Eckenrode,
Here.
Mr. Hardesty,
Here.
Mr. Larch,
Here.
Mr. Polenick,
Here.
Mrs. Williams,
Here.
Mrs. Tate is excused, myself, Mr. Johnston,
Here.
Mrs. Dolges,
Here.
Mr. Grimaldi,
Here.
Mr. Dalton,
Here.
Mr. Gramling,
Here.
Mr. Saffron,
Here.
and Mrs. Eglin is excused.
Let us please stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Johnston, do we have any presentations this evening?
We have none this evening, Mr. Hardesty.
Thank you very kindly. May we have a motion to approve the agenda that we have before us?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns?
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mr. Polenick.
Roll call, or do we do this voice?
You can do it voice if you'd like.
All in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Agenda's been approved. Mr. Muscatello, do we have any citizens' remarks at this point?
No.
Would you do me a favor and explain to our folks that are watching how they can submit questions or comments to the board for our meetings?
Sure. There are actually two ways that you can do that. The first way that you can do that is you can do it live by visiting our YouTube live stream of this meeting and typing into the comment box your question. The second way that you can do that is by emailing the board prior to the start of the meeting if you have a question regarding an item on the agenda at boardquestions@pensmanor.org.
Thank you very kindly.
You're welcome.
Please review the minutes of the March 11th business meeting and the April 1st committee meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, may we have a motion to approve the minutes as printed?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Once again, can this go voice?
Yeah, 1 second. I have a motion by Mr. Polenick and a second by Mrs. Dalton. And yes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you. After reviewing the business report that's enclosed, may we have a motion for approval?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mr. Larch.
Any questions or concerns? Roll call, Mr. Muscatello.
Let's see. Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate, oh, excuse me, Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Presentations of bills, general fund. For this school year, we have $243,548.60. The athletic fund, $273.17. Capital reserve, 0. And the cafeteria fund, $34,294.99. May we have a motion to authorize payment of these bills as stated?
I'll make the motion.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion by Mrs. Williams. Mrs. Eckenrode, would you like the second?
Yes.
Thank you all. Questions or concerns? Roll call, please, Mr. Muscatello.
Mr. Larch?
Yes.
Mr. Polenick?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Dr. Boston?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode?
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty?
Yes, thank
Motion
you.
carries.
Thank you. We have reports. We're in section 10, Superintendent's Report. Mr. Johnston?
Thank you, Mr. Hardesty. This evening, I'd like to go down through, for those of you that are watching for the first time and did not have the opportunity to watch last week, I just want to go down through some of the agenda items, and then I have some additional new items. First, this evening, as the board, we're asking you under Budget and Finance to approve a frontline renewal. For those of you that don't know what that is, that's our online attendance for all of our employees. The total cost for that is $4,867.62, and that is for the next school year. Next, under Budget and Finance, we have an application for your approval for tax abatement from Joshua and Stephanie Putt, asking for your approval. Also, we're asking for you to approve the ICTC budget for the next school year. Total cost to Penn's Manor's portion of that budget is $396,697. That is an increase from the previous year of $269. We also are projected to receive $52,314 vocational subsidy revenue coming in. So our actual estimated cost for our students to attend ICTC next school year will be $344,383. Also under Budget and Finance, asking you to approve Renaissance Learning Renewal. That is our online accelerated reader that our students in both buildings participate in. Total cost $5,968. Also asking you this evening to approve work sampling from the Pearson Group for us to do our assessment with our pre-K students, not to exceed testing 40 students at a total cost of $798. Under Buildings and Grounds this evening, we're asking for the board to approve REA doing a project to complete the total project of the electrical renovation that we've been talking about the past several months. Total cost to pay REA to complete the underground work is $23,454.02. Those funds will be used out of this fiscal year's general operating budget. Under athletics this evening, we do have one request from Coach Schultz, junior high head coach for football, requesting for Zach Kramer to be approved as a volunteer. Also asking this evening to approve a bus driver through Tri-County. That is Timothy Light. Also under policies this evening, we're asking the board to give final approval for our administrative regulations having to do with filling a board vacancy. So we've gone through that process last week. In addition, we have it typed up as an administrative regulation for your approval. Also asking you to approve revisions to two policies or an attachment to a policy. First is our oath to attach to policy 004. That's simply adding that the oath can be taken and conducted virtually instead of in person. Also asking for your approval to revise policy 150, which is Title I comparability of services. And all we're doing there is simply removing the method of determination in that policy. Under new business, we're asking for your approval for summer salary for Mr. Anthonesi at his request. Also asking you to approve for next school year an agreement with CAMCO for physical and occupational therapy. That would be a cost of $62 per hour for any student that is required for those services in their IEP. Also asking you to approve for next school year Canton Driving School Agreement for next school year. That is the same exact agreement as last year. So it's $195 per student. It will go to $2 should gas go over $4 a gallon. So that, again, same agreement as the previous 2 years, actually. Also asking you this evening to approve the nomination of Mrs. Eckenrode to a three-year term starting July 1st to serve as representing Penns Manor on the Aaron IU 28 board. She currently is serving in that capacity. That will extend for 3 years again, starting July 1. Also asking you to approve for us to operate our own extended school year for this summer at a total cost of $9,500 maximum. Also asking you to approve Adobe Creative Cloud renewal for all employee users, 100 users on our computers. Total cost $2,485. Also asking you to elect Mrs. Eckenrode as Vice President of the board. As we went through that process last month, we realized that we did not have a motion and a second before we went through nominations and voting. Then, in that situation, we'll be asking you to accept Mrs. Eckenrode's resignation as treasurer of the board. We'll take nominations for treasurer and then elect a treasurer this evening. We're also asking, as from last week, as our discussion in public, to appoint Lisa Smiley as a new board member representing Clymer Borough. Also asking you to approve a resolution calling for charter school legislation reform. And we're also asking you to hire for a long-term substitute position from April 19th to the end of the year, Michael Strini to serve in that capacity. A couple other items that I'd like to share with you. Musical this year will actually be done virtually. So information will be coming out very shortly. Music will be online, that you can purchase an online service to watch that at 7 p.m. on April 16th or 17th. Also want to thank Mrs. Miller for our homeless program collection, along with Mrs. Cessna and everyone else that collected items as we were collecting for our homeless program. All of those individuals within both of our school buildings collected 2,200 items, along with $815 in gift cards for us to use for our homeless. In addition, I want to thank the First Church of God in Indiana. They also saw on Facebook that the school district was doing that and thought it was a good deed that students and everyone was collecting. So they actually did a collection and have donated $1,115 to also the homeless program here at Penns Manor. Also want to point out that next week at the high school, all of our heritage academic competitions will be going on. Those will be done virtually. Also, next week, we will also have our pre-K enrollment being done Tuesday through Thursday. Also want to communicate out and to you as board and everyone else that's listening. We did attempt to do our report cards differently. Our third marking period report cards were opened access online starting yesterday. And we communicated that to parents. Any parent that still wants a printed report card can certainly contact either guidance office. We'll print those and mail those out. Since that communication went out, we've only printed 3 to 5 in each of the 2 buildings. So everyone else is accessing online. And we'll continue to do that. It's just one of our ways of transitioning to doing things paperless. Also, just want to point out our Google Classroom is still going on this year and will continue through the end of the school year. Currently, we have 8 students enrolled at the elementary school in Google Classroom, and at the high school, 40 students. Also want to point out that we will be starting PSSA testing at the high school before our next board meeting. And then I also just want to point out that we will need to have a short executive session at the end of this meeting having to do with legal matters. And that's all I have, Mr. Hardesty.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Board members, please.
That is correct, Mr. Hardesty.
All right. Number 11.
That is correct.
All right. Number 12.
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Hardesty. You're welcome.
Committee, Mrs. Williams,
I
anything
have
to
nothing.
report?
Mr. Hardesty.
Thank you very kindly, Ms. Williams. Budget and Finance. I'm I'm chairman of that. Frontline renewal. I move to approve an agreement with Frontline Education to provide an absence and substitute management program for 1-year term commencing on July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 at a cost of $4,867.62 as presented. May we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mrs. Eckenrode.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, please.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item B, I move to accept and approve, subject to review by the County Board of Property Assessment Appeals and the Chief Assessor, the new home construction tax abatement application of Joshua and Stephanie Putt, 126 Grace Church Road, Penn Run, PA 15765 for the school real estate tax exemption for a period of 24 consecutive months, starting with the effective date as determined by the County Board of Assessment Appeals. A copy of the application will be forwarded to the County Board of Assessment Appeals and the Chief Assessor for review. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mr. Larch.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, please.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate. Oh, sorry. I'm going to be waiting a long time on that one. Yeah, I'm just going to stare at my paper over here. Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. We encourage all potential residents or folks thinking of building a new home to consider the Penns Manor area because you would be eligible with a new home being built for the tax abatement, just as we approved. Number C, approve Indiana County Technology Center 2021 budget. I move to approve the Indiana County Technology Center general operating budget for the fiscal year July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022 in the amount of $7,051,056 with Penns Manor Area School District share of $396,697 before the any vocational education subsidy. Second, please.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mrs. Dalton.
Questions or concerns? Nays and yeas, Mr. Muscatello.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Mrs. Stolges, how many students do you say we have at the Technology Center? She's still with us? Do you remember, Mr. 40? 40 students.
Sorry, it wouldn't unmute. I'm here. We usually have generally between 40 and 45 students. We usually send 40, but sometimes we get kids that move in from other districts that are already attending.
Thank you very kindly. Item D, Renaissance Learning Renewal. I move to approve accelerated reader renewal for the elementary school and the junior senior high school for the time period of July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022 at a cost of $5,968. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mr. Polenick.
Questions or concerns? Mr. Muscatello, roll call, please.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Plennick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item E, renew Pearson work sampling license. I move to approve a one-year renewal of work sampling online license for the pre-K counts assessments through Pearson for the 2021-2022 school year at the cost of $798. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mrs. Eckenrode.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, Mr. Muscatello.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Plennick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Buildings and grounds, Mr. Plenny?
Thank you, Mr. Hardesty. I have one item, REA Energy Service Agreement. I'd like to make the motion to approve an agreement with REA Energy Service to provide new underground service in the amount of $23,454.02 as attached.
Looking for a second?
I'll second.
I
Thank
have
you.
a motion by
Lewis.
Mr. Plennick and a second by Mr. Larch.
Questions or concerns? Roll call.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Plennick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Number 16, Athletic Committee, Mr. Larch.
Yes, I do have one item, Mr. Hardesty. I'd like to make a motion to approve the following sports volunteers for the, and it should be 2021-22 school year, pending the receipt of all current clearance, cardio, and impact testing, and the coaching education courses as required by PIAA. Zach Kramer for football.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Tammy.
I have a motion by Mr. Larch and a second by Mrs. Dalton.
Questions or concerns? Yeas and nays, Mr. Muscatello?
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Plennick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Anything else, Mr.
Oh,
Larch?
that's all I have for that item.
Thank you
today.
very kindly. Transportation Committee, with Mrs. Tate being absent, Mr. Larch, would you take that report?
I
please?
sure will. Number 17, approved drivers for 2020-2021 school year. I'd like to make a motion to approve the following bus drivers and substitutes for Tri-County Transportation for the 2020-21 school year.
Second,
I'll second it.
Wait, I got to get the name of the,
I apologize.
don't rush me. Timothy Light.
Mrs. Dalton, would you still like the second?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton, or Mr. Larch with the motion and Mrs. Dalton with the second?
Thank you. Questions and concerns? Roll call, please.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Plennick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And that's all I have, Mr. Hardesty.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you filling in. You did a stalwart job there.
Well, thank you.
Number 18, policies. Approve the administrative regulation number 004-AR-001, filling a board member vacancy. May we have a motion to adopt the administrative regulation 004-AR-001, filling a board member vacancy as attached?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Mr.
I have a
Lewis.
motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mr. Larch.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, Mr. Muscatello?
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Planick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
got it. Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
motion carries.
Approve revisions to policies. May we have a motion to adopt the revisions to the following policies as presented? All board policies appear on the district's website. Oath of office and attached to policy 004 and the 150 Title I comparability of services.
Make the motion.
Second,
I'll second it.
thank you.
I have a
Mrs.
motion by Mr. Planick and a second by Mrs. Dalton.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, Mr. Muscatello.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Planick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
motion carries.
Superintendent Johnson, any correspondence you need to share with us?
We have none this evening, Mr. Hardesty.
Thank you, sir. Under new business, section 20, item A. May we have a motion to grant Dan Antonazzi his summer salary in a lump sum payment at the end of the school year if funds are available?
I'll make the motion.
A second?
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mrs. Williams.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, sir.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Planick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
motion carries.
Item B, may we have a motion to approve renewing the contract with Camco Physical and Occupational Therapy, LLC, from August 1st, 2021 to July 31st, 2022, to provide physical and occupational therapy services to students with special needs at a cost of $62 per hour.
I'll make the motion.
Looking for a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mr. Larch and a second by Mr. Planick.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, Mr. Muscatello.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Planick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
motion carries.
Item C, may we have a motion to approve the renewal agreement with Canton's Driving School to provide behind-the-wheel driver education instruction at a rate of $195 per student or $200 per student if the cost per gallon of gas is $4 or above. Students participating in behind-the-wheel driver education instruction are responsible for reimbursing the district $50 towards the cost of the instruction. Students unable to receive classroom training during the day may receive instruction from Canton's School of Driving at the cost to the district of $60 per student upon approval of the high school principal.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Second,
second it.
thank you.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mrs. Dalton.
Questions, concerns? Roll call, sir.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Planick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty,
Yes.
motion carries.
Item D, may we have a motion to appoint Jill Eckenrode as Penns Manor Area's board nominee for the Aaron IU 28 for a 3-year term effective July 1, 2021.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mrs. Dalton and a second by Mr. Larch.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, sir.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mrs. Eckenrode, for agreeing to do that and representing us
You're
at
welcome.
Aaron.
You're welcome.
It will be at the same salary as I assume as last year, right? No raise, okay. Number E, may we have a motion to approve extended school year program to be managed and staffed by the Penns Manor Area School District. This program will provide special education and related services to students with disabilities beyond the regular 180-day school year as required under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. The total estimated cost to the district is $9,500. The board grants the administration permission to post and advertise for the extended school year program positions.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mrs. Dalton.
Questions, concerns? Yeas and nays, Mr. Muscatello?
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item F, may we have a motion to approve the quote and renewal of Adobe Creative Cloud from Gov Connections, Inc. at the cost of $2,485 as attached.
Make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Polenick. Looking for a second?
A second.
Thank you.
A motion by Mr. Polenick and a second by Mrs. Eckenrode.
Questions? Roll call, sir.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item G, elect Jill Eckenrode as Vice President of the Board of School Directors. May we have a motion to elect Mrs. Jill Eckenrode as Vice President of the Board of Directors, School Board of Directors.
I'll make the motion.
There's one more piece to that.
I didn't get it all out.
That's okay.
Let me start over since I messed it all up. May we have a motion to elect Mrs. Jill Eckenrode as Vice President of the Board of School Directors. Mrs. Eckenrode was duly nominated as Vice President of the Board of School Directors at the March 11th, 2021 meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Mrs. Dalton and a second by Mr. Larch.
Thank you. All questions or concerns? Roll call, Mr. Muscatello.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
May we have a motion to accept the resignation of Jill Eckenrode as Treasurer of the Board of School Directors due to her election as Vice President of the Board of School Directors.
I'll make the motion.
Then I'll second it, I guess.
I have a motion by Mr. Polenick and a second by Mr. Larch.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, sir.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Because of our action in item H, nominations are now in order for the treasurer of the school board of directors. Any nominations, please?
I would like to nominate Deborah Tate.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. So we'll add, go to number J. May we have a motion to elect Deborah Tate as treasurer per section 404 of the Public School Code of 1949 as amended to fill the unexpired term of July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021, and to approve the treasurer bond of $5,000 issued by Liberty Mutual as surety. The board and Deborah Tate have agreed to waive the salary for this position. Motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Eckenrode and a second by Mr. Larch.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, sir.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Plenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations, Mrs. Tate. You need not be present to win. All right, item K. May we have a motion to appoint Lisa Smiley, a qualified elector of the district, as a member of the Board of School Directors of Penns Manor Area School District to fill the vacant position for Region 1, Clymer Borough. The newly appointed board member shall hold office until the first Monday of December after the next municipal election, which is the first Monday of December, 2021. Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
A second?
I have a motion by Mrs. Dalton and a second by Mrs. Eckenrode.
Questions or concerns? Roll call, please.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Plenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
The board wishes to thank the 3 citizens that applied for the Region 1 Clymer Borough vacancy. It was a hard decision to pick from 3 fine candidates. Per the policy concerning filling vacated board seats that we just approved, Mrs. Smiley will take the prescribed oath of office and become a full member of our board at that time. Mrs. Smiley will have orientation of PM procedures and customs and be presented with the essentials of school board service, a guide to surviving your first year. Mrs. Smiley also has been designated as a member of the Facilities Committee and the Transportation Committee. Congratulations, Lisa. We look forward to working with you. Item L, may we have a motion to approve the resolution calling for charter school legislation reform as presented. A copy of the entire resolution is incorporated in this motion and will be made part of the minutes of this meeting. I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Hardesty and a second by Mrs. Williams.
Questions or concerns? Yes, Mr. Moscatello, would you read for our folks? It's just such an important issue. Can you read and then perhaps do some explanation so our folks watching can better understand our issue with charter schools and why we want this resolution?
Sure, you want me to read the entire resolution?
Well, what you're comfortable with.
So the resolution says, whereas charter schools are independent entities separate from public school districts, and yet Penns Manor Area School District has spent nearly $4 million over the last 10 years and is projected to spend $660,000 this year in taxpayer money via mandatory payments to brick and mortar and cyber charter schools. And whereas the charter school tuition funding formula is fundamentally flawed because it mandates the inclusion of charter school tuition costs paid by each school district in its total expenses. Therefore, the per student tuition rate is inflated insofar as the tuition rate districts pay charter schools is actually higher than each district's per student expenditure. And whereas the mandated charter school tuition rate calculations are based on school districts' expenses, including costs for career and technical education programs and student activities such as athletics, intramurals, and fine arts, all of which charter schools are not required to provide and many do not offer, leading to further inflated tuition payments. And whereas charter schools frequently spend less than they receive for special education services, this is primarily due to charter schools disproportionately identifying students with special needs in certain less costly areas and avoiding the enrollment of students with special needs in certain more costly areas. And whereas charter schools are not governed by boards with members elected by the community, and elected public school district school boards have no oversight authority on how charter schools use public funding. And further, many charter schools do not publicize their meetings and provide financial and policy transparency, leading to potential hidden conflicts of interest. And whereas our school district offers cyber learning options for students with local oversight at a significantly lower cost than cyber charter schools, and whereas cyber charter schools typically have minimal facilities or grounds for student use, but receive the same per capita funding as their brick and mortar counterparts, which shifts funding away from both public school districts and brick and mortar charter schools. And whereas the need for significant charter school funding reform remains vital. For more than a decade, the Penns Manor Area School District has been challenged to keep up with the escalating charter school costs while struggling to minimize tax increases but also maintain programs. And whereas, while up to 25% of the faculty at charter schools may be uncertified, public school districts are required to employ 100% certified faculty, which creates an uneven playing field that can result in public school districts encountering obstacles with offering programs when certified teachers are not available. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Penns Manor Area School District Board of Directors, in light of our concerns with the current charter school law, call upon local legislators to support the proposed charter school reform bill and address the following: eliminate the inclusion of charter school tuition costs and students within this tuition formula. Reform charter funding formula to eliminate costs for programming not offered, career and technical centers, athletics, intramurals, fine arts, and other extracurricular activities. Reform special education to align costs with services provided and ensure appropriate student identification. Enhance the power and authority of school boards in charter oversight, increasing transparency and taxpayer understanding. Enforce equal prohibitions on conflicts of interest. Require school district board representation on charter school boards. Eliminate tuition payments to cyber charter schools if a school district offers their own cyber option. And finally, provide school districts with the same teacher certification and flexibility. In light of the critical need for reform, we are advocating for substantial change in order to better realize the stated goal of the current charter school law to, quote, improve pupil learning, end quote. Each school board director will inform and educate their respective communities on the issues described in this resolution. We encourage our community members to weigh in on this important matter and share their thinking with their legislators. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be posted on our website and submitted to the elected state senators and representatives of our school districts in the General Assembly and to the Governor of Pennsylvania. And I'll just end by saying that the cyber tuition calculation referenced in this resolution does unjustly include the actual costs paid for that cyber tuition. So if I may just be general in nature, you would take the expenditures that this school district has and divide it by the enrollment, and that would be the general calculation for a cyber school. But those expenditures, and there are some exclusions. For example, they allow us to exclude transportation. They allow us to exclude certain facilities costs, but we do not exclude the actual costs paid to the cyber schools in that calculation. So it's almost as if the more you pay to a cyber school, the more your cyber tuition rate goes up. So that's not actually being excluded. So the formula to calculate the cyber tuition needs to be fixed. I don't think it was ever intended to be like it is. And so it's gotten out of hand. And this district has paid the price for something that we have no control over. So
Thank you,
you're
sir.
welcome.
Big points, $6.5 million over the past 10 years, $660,000 for this year. And we encourage you to see it on the website and talk to our legislatures, talk to Senator Pittman, Representative Struzzi's, others. This is a detriment to our school district, to all school districts, public school districts, when we have our own cyber school or cyber academy right here at Penns Manor. All right, can we have a roll call, sir?
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item M, may we have a motion to hire Michael Strenny as a long-term substitute high school teacher effective on or about April the 18th, 2021, to fill the vacancy which was created by a board-approved leave, and further to approve the compensation in accordance with the district's policy of a rate of $90 per day for the first 20 consecutive days worked in that position, and with the remainder of the days worked in that position to be compensated at the daily rate of $135. This long-term substitute position is not to exceed 90 work days. May we have a motion, please?
Make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Mr. Polenick and a second by Mrs. Eckenrode.
Questions, concerns? Roll call, sir.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Polenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
excuse me, Mrs. Williams, as
Yes.
I have a yes by Mrs. Dalton, Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item N, the Board of Directors wishes to recognize and heartily congratulate these students' accomplishments. PMEA Student of the Month, April, Reese Hayes. KDKA Hometown High Q, Penns Manor team members, Luke Rainey, Riley Hill, Allison Johnston defeated Kiskiera area and Avila area school districts. A taping of this competition took place or was showed on KDKA this past Saturday, April the 3rd. They will now move on to the playoffs, and additional episodes will be taped and aired on KDKA at a later time and date. 2021 PMEA All-State Band, Connor Antonio and Bailey Horn. The following students will be competing in the final round of FBLA state competition. Management Information Systems Team, Autumn Kramer, Mason Engel, and Parker Clayton. In the Parliamentary Procedures Team, Greta Rattay, Matt Zajac, Allison Johnston, and Riley Hill. For the Southwestern Regional Science Olympiad, our participants are Gwen Stahl and Dex Dwyer. First place in the right CAD in the event, Belle Haddon and Brooke Price. Third place in the gravity vehicle event. The 2021 NIE Newspaper and Education Writing Contest for the Best Opinion column. First place, Luke Rainey, 11th grade. Pennsylvania Student Press Association's journalism competition in the category of newspaper sports article. First place, Luke Rainey. Again, congratulations to all, and keep up the good work. You make Penns Manor proud. May we have a motion to approve the following trips, conferences in our attachment?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank
I have a
you.
motion by Mr. Larch and a second by Mrs. Williams.
Questions or concerns? Let's have a roll call, Mr. Muscatello.
Mr. Larch,
Yes.
Mr. Plenick,
Yes.
Mrs. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Tate, Mrs. Dalton,
Yes.
Dr. Boston,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckenrode,
Yes.
Mr. Hardesty.
Yes. We have a committee meeting on May the 6th at 7 PM and a business meeting on May 13th at 7 PM, perhaps in this room. Anything else that needs to be brought before the board? We know that we have an executive session afterwards for legal matters. If there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.
Which motion was the last one?